This is Megan Griswold, and today we will be talking about fallacies and cultural reasoning preferences. A fallacy is a failure in logical reasoning that leads to unsound or misleading judgments. You need to be able to examine arguments in order to prevent yourself from falling for these fallacies by being able to identify them. Types of fallacies include unsupported assertions, which are claims that don't actually have evidence. An example of this comes from the Federal Trade Commission in an article called New FTC Warning Letters Cite Unsupported Coronavirus-Related Health and Earnings Claims by Sina Gresson, in which it said, the FTC says that the health and earnings claims are unsubstantiated and therefore violate truth in advertising laws. The products at issue are not scientifically proven to treat or prevent COVID-19, the disease that coronavirus causes. In this example, companies were trying to make unsupported claims that their products could treat or prevent COVID-19. Another type of fallacy is the ad populum or bandwagon fallacy, which is appealing to the popular reasoning without actual evidence. An example of this comes from the B-Town blog by Dana Mason, in which she cites the popular advertisement 9 out of 10 dentists approve of this toothpaste as ad populum, as no actual reasons or evidence are given for why they support this toothpaste. They just expect you to too. Another type of fallacy is ad hominem, which is an attack on the messenger and not the message. An example of this comes from the New York Times article, The 598 People, Places, and Things Donald Trump Has Insulted on Twitter, a complete list. In this article, Jasmine C. Lee and Kevin Quealy cite Trump's tweet that says fake ABC News. This is an ad hominem fallacy because he's attacking the news station and not the messages that they are giving out. Another type of fallacy is the false analogy fallacy, which is comparing two things that are too dissimilar to warrant the conclusion. An example of this comes from the article, These are the 3 most important fallacies in the coronavirus debate by Sane Blau, in which she cites the comparison of coronavirus and the flu as one of these fallacies. She says, we don't know yet what kind of figures we will eventually have to compare because we don't really know what the future will look like. She's saying that we don't know enough about corona in order to actually compare it to the flu, so this is a false analogy. Another type of fallacy is the faulty generalization fallacy, which is an inductive fallacy that involves generalizing too broadly. An example of this is saying that all politicians are crooked just because a few have made some mistakes. Another type of fallacy is the slippery slope fallacy, which is a causation fallacy. It says one small thing will lead to another big thing with no proof. An example of this comes from the article Slippery Slope Fallacy Examples in Real Life, in Commercials, and in Politics, in which they cite the argument that legalizing marijuana will lead to its universal use and universal acceptance. But there's no actual proof that taking a small step, such as legalizing the drug, will actually lead to universal use. Another type of fallacy is the post hoc fallacy, which is the false cause fallacy. An example of this comes from the article 4 Logical Fallacies from the Third Clinton and Trump Debate, in which they cite Donald Trump's argument about the causation of gun violence. They say Donald Trump implies a causal link between tough gun laws and tremendous gun violence, as if one is causing the other. However, he presents no proof or develops no reasoning to explain this causation. The last type of fallacy is the false dichotomy fallacy, which is an either-or statement that ignores other reasonable options. An example of this comes from the article A Reality-Based Game for Trump Watchers, Name That Fallacy, by Glenn Altshuler, in which he cites the example, Democrats can either seek the vengeance of ridiculous partisan investigations or join him to enact a new miraculous economic vision for American prosperity without citing a middle ground option in order for both parties' goals to be made. Knowing these fallacies will help you think more critically. Now we will move on to our next topic of cultural reasoning preferences. Other cultures may not use the same terms for ethos, pathos, and logos, but these are still very much involved in their arguments. Differences in culture can lead to misunderstandings easily. So it's important to know these differences so that way we can prevent misunderstandings. These differences include topics considered to be appropriate to debate, how different cultures conceptualize issues. For example, other cultures may choose to conceptualize them more spiritually, and America tends to base it more off scientific fact. Another difference is the norms for structuring or framing a discussion. Other cultures tend to look for a more cooperative consensus and use stories in order to frame their argument, rather than looking at who won the argument and using more factual evidence. Another difference is the level of explicitness in their conclusions. America tends to be very concise and clear in their conclusions, but other countries are more ambiguous and have more subtle conclusions in their arguments. Another difference is the forms of proof. America, again, tends to use facts, whereas other countries or cultures tend to use narratives or analogies and anecdotes to support their claims. The last difference is the communication styles that different cultures have. Thank you. Now Brenna will discuss how to incorporate principles and forms of invitational rhetoric into your writing.